Commander Hyun wiped the sweat from his palms as he stared at the massive alien ship through the bridge windows. 3 months of deep space patrol, and now this. The crystalline vessel was easily twice the size of their own ship, moving through space like it owned the entire galaxy. "Sir, they're not responding to our standard hail," reported Communications Officer Min, her voice tight with nervousness. She'd been monitoring radio frequencies for hours, trying every protocol in the book. Wait, something's coming through now. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that made everyone on the bridge take a step back. It was tall, impossibly thin, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes were too large, too knowing, and when it spoke, the words came out in melodic tones that their translator struggled to process. "Greetings, primitive species," the alien said, its voice carrying an unmistakable note of condescension. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Confederation. We have been observing your world for some time." Captain June stepped forward, trying to maintain his composure. He'd trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of facing an actual alien intelligence. "I'm Captain June of the Terran Defense Force. This is an honor, Ambassador." The alien's expression shifted slightly, what might have been amusement flickering across its features. "Your enthusiasm is noted. We represent over 3,000 civilized worlds, all united in peaceful cooperation. Your species shows potential for integration into our alliance." Lieutenant Bin, monitoring the tactical display, noticed something troubling. The alien ship's weapon systems were active, not threatening, but ready. She caught Captain June's eye and nodded toward her screen. He saw the readings and felt his stomach drop. "Integration," June asked carefully. "What does that involve?" "Standard procedures," Veltar replied with a wave of one elongated hand. "Cultural assessment, technological evaluation, population management. Your world will be assigned a proper place within our hierarchy based on your species' capabilities." The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Population management, hierarchy. These weren't the words of equals meeting for the first time. Communications Officer Min's hands trembled as she worked her console. She'd been picking up transmissions from the alien ship, fragments of conversations. In their native language, the translator was getting better at processing their speech, and what she was hearing made her blood run cold. "Captain," she whispered, "I'm picking up internal communications from their ship. They're discussing something." "Called Protocol 7. Ambassador Veltar continued speaking, oblivious to their growing alarm. "Your species will be relocated to designated worlds more suitable for your development level. Earth will be repurposed for more efficient use by advanced civilizations." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. "Captain..." June felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't first contact. This was an eviction notice. "And if we refuse?" June asked quietly. The alien's skin shifted to darker hues. "Refusal is not typically an option. Primitive species rarely understand what is best for galactic stability." The emergency alarm pierced through the quiet hum of Lunar Station like a knife. Communications Specialist Hai dropped her coffee mug, the hot liquid splashing across her console as she scrambled to answer the incoming distress call. "This is Colony Ship New Hope," came the panicked voice through the static. "We have an emergency situation. The Confederation escort is powering weapons." Director Saul burst into the communications center, still wearing his sleep clothes. He'd been dreaming of his daughter aboard that very ship when the alarms woke him. "What's happening out there?" Hai's fingers flew over her keyboard, trying to boost the signal. "Sir, Captain Park from the New Hope is reporting that their Confederation escort has activated some kind of scanning beam. He says it's interfering with their navigation systems." The voice from the ship crackled through again, fear evident in every word. "The beam is getting stronger. Our hull is heating up. We're trying to move away, but our engines are failing." Sol grabbed the microphone. "New Hope, this is Lunar Station. Can you see any other ships in your area? Any backup?" "Negative, Lunar Station. The Confederation ship is the only one here. They're not responding to our hails. The beam is burning through our hull plating now." Through the static, they could hear the sound of metal groaning under stress. Emergency klaxons were blaring aboard the colony ship, and voices shouted orders in the background. "Sir," Hay whispered, her face pale as she monitored the readings. "I'm showing massive energy discharge from the Confederation vessel. The new Hope's life signs are dropping fast." The transmission suddenly filled with screaming. Men, women, children, all crying out as their ship was torn apart around them. Searle gripped the microphone so hard his knuckles turned white. "New Hope, respond. Can anyone hear me?" The screaming stopped. The transmission went dead. For 30 seconds, nobody in the communications center moved. The silence felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. 15,000 people had just vanished from existence, and they'd listened to every horrible second. 3 hours later, Ambassador Veltar appeared on the main screen, his oil-slick skin reflecting the bridge. Lights in nauseating patterns. He seemed completely calm, as if nothing had happened. "Director Sol," the alien said with what might have been a pleasant tone, "I bring news of a minor incident involving your colony vessel." Sol's hands shook with rage. "Minor incident? You murdered 15,000 people. An unfortunate miscalculation. Occurred during routine inspection procedures," Veltar replied without any change in expression. "Your vessel interfered with our scanner array while we were conducting safety evaluations." "Safety evaluations?" Sol could barely form the words. "You burned them alive." The alien tilted its head, a gesture that seemed curious rather than apologetic. "Your emotional response is unexpected. Such accidents are factored into integration costs. We are prepared to offer standard compensation of 50,000 galactic credits." The number hit Sol like a physical blow. 50,000 credits for 15,000 lives, 3 credits per human being. You think money can replace those people? Those were families, children, pregnant mothers heading to start new lives. "Your attachment to individual units is noted but impractical," Veltar said with the same tone someone might use to discuss damaged cargo. "The Confederation maintains detailed actuarial tables for such incidents. 50,000 credits represents fair market compensation for your loss." Sol stared at the alien's face, looking for any sign of understanding, any hint that this creature grasped the magnitude of what had happened. He found nothing but cold calculation. Admiral Dan crushed the declaration of war in his fist as he stood in the war room deep inside Earth's military headquarters. The paper was simple, direct, and signed by every major world leader. 3 words kept repeating in his mind: 15,000 dead. "Sir, the fleet is assembled," reported Lieutenant Bin, her young face already hardened by weeks of preparation. "Every available ship is in position around the Confederation vessels." Through the massive view screen, Dan watched the alien fleet floating peacefully in Earth's orbit. Beautiful crystalline ships that caught and reflected sunlight like precious gems. Their formations were perfect, artistic even, arranged in patterns that spoke of centuries of peaceful civilization. "They still have their shields down," observed Colonel Han from his position at the tactical display. "Intelligence reports indicate they're not even manning their weapons stations." Dan nodded grimly. The aliens had requested a formal meeting to discuss their generous compensation offer. They'd arrived with diplomatic flags displayed, expecting negotiations over coffee and handshakes. They had no idea what was coming. "All ships, this is Admiral Dan," he spoke into his communicator. "Remember what they did to the New Hope. Remember those children screaming as their ship burned. Today we make them understand that humanity doesn't negotiate with murderers." Across the human fleet, weapon systems came online. Kinetic cannons, fusion torpedoes, electromagnetic pulse generators, everything humanity had developed for theoretical space warfare. The aliens had given them 3 days to prepare, 3 days to turn their peaceful intentions into instruments of death. Fire. The first salvo came from 12 different directions simultaneously. Tungsten rods accelerated to near light speed, punched through the Confederation flagship like paper. The beautiful crystal hull shattered into a million glittering fragments, each piece carrying the frozen remains of the crew inside. Aboard the surviving alien ships, chaos erupted. Ambassador Veltar screamed orders that made no sense, his oil-slick skin flashing colors that his own crew had never seen before. Pure terror, their xenobiologists would later classify it. "Shields up! Evasive maneuvers!" Veltar shrieked, but his crews had never performed combat maneuvers. They were diplomats, scientists, Peaceful explorers who'd never imagined that anyone would attack without formal declarations and preliminary negotiations. The second wave of human attacks targeted their engines. Fusion warheads detonated inside the alien ship's power cores, turning their advanced technology against them. One Confederation vessel tried to flee, but found human fighters already positioned to intercept it. "Sir," Lieutenant Bin reported, watching her scanner readings with amazement, "they're not fighting back. Their weapons are more advanced than ours, but they're not using them." "They don't know how," Dan replied coldly. "When you've lived in peace for 3,000 years, you forget how to make war. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 7 Confederation ships drifted dead in space. Their crews either killed by the initial strikes or suffocated when their life support systems failed. Only 2 alien vessels remained functional, and they were broadcasting surrender signals in over 50 different languages. Admiral Kexmore, the surviving Confederation commander, appeared on screen with his translator unit damaged and sparking. "Please," he gasped, "we came in peace. This was a diplomatic mission." Dan's expression never changed. So was the new hope. The human fleet began boarding procedures, not to accept surrender, but to capture alien technology and interrogate survivors. Earth's children had been murdered, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to declare war. Fleet Commander Yun stared at the formal complaint that had just arrived from something called the Galactic Ethics Council. The document was 12 pages long, written in flowery diplomatic language that made her stomach turn. She crumpled it up and tossed it in the recycling bin. "Another complaint, ma'am?" asked Intelligence Officer Wu, looking up from his stack. "They have captured alien communications." "What are they crying about this time?" "Apparently we're not fighting fair," Yun replied with a bitter laugh. "They're upset that we used their own crew members as shields during the boarding of the science vessel last week." Colonel Han, still wearing his combat armor from the latest raid, shook his head in disbelief. "They want us to fight fair, after they murdered 15,000 civilians without blinking an eye." The war room fell silent except for the hum of computers processing battle data. On the main screen, reports flowed in from human forces across 3 star systems. Every report told the same story. The aliens had no idea how to handle real warfare. "Sir, we have a new development," reported Tactical Officer Lee. "The Confederation is requesting a formal meeting to discuss what they call acceptable rules of engagement." Yun almost laughed out loud. "Rules of engagement? What's next, asking us to schedule our attacks in advance?" The truth was, humans had been improvising their tactics from day one. When conventional weapons ran low, they'd converted mining equipment into ship killers. Asteroid, mining charges became devastating bombs. Medical ships were retrofitted with missile launchers. Even garbage containers were filled with radioactive waste and launched at enemy vessels. "The aliens don't understand," Wu explained, pulling up intercepted communications on his screen. "They've been fighting wars with formal declarations, scheduled battles, and agreed-upon rules for 3,000 years. They actually used to pause fighting for meal breaks." "Meal breaks?" Colonel Han couldn't hide his disgust. "While our people are dying out there?" The latest reports were particularly grim. Human forces had captured a Confederation supply depot by hiding inside cargo containers and attacking from within. The aliens had loaded human prisoners onto their own ships as bargaining chips, only to watch in horror as human captains rammed those same vessels without hesitation. "Look at this," Lee said, highlighting a section of the alien complaint. "They're upset that we vent atmosphere from captured ships with survivors still inside. They call it unnecessarily cruel." "Cruel?" Yun's voice turned ice-cold. "They want to see cruel? Show them the recordings from the New Hope. Show them what their safety inspection did to our children." On the tactical display, a new human fleet was preparing to deploy their latest innovation. Modified cargo ships packed with industrial acid and set to crash into alien vessels. The acid would eat through their hulls while they were still alive. Inside, "Ma'am," Wu said quietly, "some of our own people are starting to question our methods. The psychological evaluations are showing stress levels off the charts." Yun turned to face her officers, all of them hardened by months of brutal warfare. "Anyone who has a problem with our tactics can remember why we're fighting. The aliens started this war when they decided human lives were worth 3 credits each. She pulled up the holographic display, showing current battle zones. Red dots marked human victories, each one representing alien ships destroyed, bases captured, worlds occupied. The Galactic Ethics Council wants rules. Yun's smile was sharp as a blade. Here's our rule. We fight until every alien in the galaxy understands that humanity is not to be trifled with. If that means using their own crews as human shields, so be it. If that means turning their peaceful ships into floating coffins, that's what we'll do. The room fell silent again. Outside, another human fleet was preparing to launch, their holds full of improvised weapons that no civilized species would dream of using. War had come to the galaxy, and humanity was teaching everyone what it really meant. Captain Lee stood in the broadcasting chamber of the captured Confederation command ship, surrounded by alien prisoners huddled in the corner. The crystalline beings had stopped changing colors hours ago, their skin now a dull gray that human xenobiologists had identified as complete terror. "Begin recording," Lee ordered his communications team. "Make sure this goes out on all Confederation." Emergency channels. The camera focused on Lee's face, calm and professional, like he was delivering a weather report. Behind him, the alien prisoners trembled as human soldiers moved through their duties with mechanical efficiency. "This message is for the Galactic Confederation," Lee began in a conversational tone. "We want you to understand what happens when you murder our children." What followed was a carefully orchestrated demonstration that would be talked about in whispers across the galaxy for decades. Lee calmly explained each procedure as his team worked, describing the biological differences between human and alien physiology, how their crystal-like bones shattered differently than human bones, how their internal organs reacted to various stimuli. The transmission lasted 37 minutes. On the Confederation homeworld, Admiral Kexmore watched the broadcast with growing horror. His staff stood frozen around the command center, unable to look away from the screen, but unable to keep watching either. "Turn it off," Kexmore whispered, but nobody moved. "Sir," reported his aide, her voice barely audible, "fleet morale has dropped 60% in the last hour. 3 entire battle groups are requesting permission to retreat beyond human space." The broadcast had included audio recordings from the captured aliens, their musical voices twisted into sounds no civilized being had ever heard before. Worse were the moments of silence, when the aliens stopped making noise altogether, but the humans kept talking, explaining what they were doing in calm, educational tones. "We are a peaceful people," Kexmore said to no one in particular. "We haven't fought a real war in 3,000 years. Neither had they, sir," his aide replied quietly, "until we killed their civilians." Across Confederation space, the psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Crews who had signed up for peaceful exploration missions suddenly found themselves face-to-face with an enemy that treated warfare like science. Human forces had begun broadcasting similar messages from every captured ship, each one more creative than the last. The aliens had expected negotiation, perhaps some aggressive posturing, maybe even formal combat with established rules. They hadn't expected humans to turn their own crews into teaching aids for galactic-wide horror shows. Intelligence Officer Park, monitoring alien communications from the human command ship, shook his head in amazement. "Sir, they're completely falling apart. I'm intercepting communications from Confederation ships, actually abandoning their posts without orders." "What are they saying?" asked Colonel Min, studying the tactical display that showed alien formations dissolving across multiple star systems. "Mostly prayers," Park replied. "Apparently they have over 40 different gods, and they're begging all of them to protect them from humans." The most disturbing part wasn't the violence itself, but how efficiently humans had adapted to it. Every captured alien became a source of information. Every destroyed ship became a case study in alien weaknesses. Every battle became a learning experience for the next encounter. "Sir," reported communications specialist Jin, "we're receiving formal surrender offers from 12 different Confederation fleets. They're offering to abandon their positions if we promise not to broadcast what we do to their crews." Captain Lee looked at the alien prisoners cowering in the corner, then back at his team preparing for the next demonstration. "Tell them surrender isn't an option," he said calmly. "Not until every alien in the galaxy understands what happens when you treat human lives as acceptable losses." General Kang stepped through the wreckage of Proxima Station, her boots crunching on broken alien technology and scattered debris. The battle had ended 6 hours ago, but smoke still rose from the twisted metal that used to be the galaxy's most advanced research facility. "Report," she ordered, surveying the carnage around her. Major Song approached, his uniform torn and blackened from plasma burns. Behind him, human engineers were already dismantling alien weapon systems while medics collected biological samples from the fallen enemies. "The Draknor were everything the intelligence reports claimed," Song began, wiping alien blood from his face. 7 feet tall, natural armor plating, plasma weapons integrated into their arms. "They haven't fought in 1,000 years, but their combat instincts were still sharp." Kang nodded, studying the massive alien corpse at her feet. The Draknor warrior had taken 17 direct hits before finally going down, its reptilian face frozen in an expression of shocked rage. These weren't the peaceful diplomats humanity had been fighting for months. "The Confederation woke them up specifically to stop us," Song continued. "Ancient warrior race, bred for combat, designed to be the perfect soldiers. They called them their final solution to the human problem." "And how did that work out for them?" Kang asked with grim amusement. "See for yourself," Song gestured to the battlefield around them. The station had been a slaughter, but not the kind the Confederation had expected. The Draknor had fought with honor, following ancient battle codes that demanded single combat and glorious death. They'd announced their attacks, challenged human officers to individual duels, and refused to strike down wounded enemies. Humans had responded by shooting them in the back. "They fought like gladiators," Song explained, kicking a fallen Draknor. "Weapon. All ritual and ceremony. They actually paused the battle twice to perform some kind of warrior's salute to our dead. While we were setting up crossfire positions," Kang finished, "what did we learn from their technology?" Song's smile was predatory. "Their plasma weapons are devastating but have a 15-second charge cycle. Their armor has joint weaknesses we can exploit. Most importantly, they're programmed to seek honorable death, not victory at any cost." Around them, human soldiers worked with mechanical efficiency. Every alien weapon was catalogued and reverse-engineered. Every piece of armor was analyzed for weak points. Even the alien bodies were being studied, their biological systems mapped for future reference. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Cho, approaching with a tablet full of data, "we've identified 47 other ancient warrior races that the Confederation might try to wake up. Intelligence suggests they're getting desperate." Kang studied the list of sleeping monsters the aliens might unleash. Each species was more terrifying than the last, evolved for warfare in ways that made the Draknor look like children playing with toys. "Let them wake up every monster in the galaxy," she said coldly. "They still don't understand what they're fighting." The truth was becoming clear across the battlefield. The galaxy was full of species that had been bred for war, designed for combat, evolved for violence. But they'd all been sleeping for centuries, their warrior instincts dulled by peace and prosperity. Humans were different. Humans had never stopped fighting. While other species developed art and philosophy, humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. They didn't fight for honor or glory or ancient codes. They fought to win. "Ma'am," Song said quietly, "the surviving Draknor are requesting permission to die in ritual combat rather than be taken prisoner." Kang looked at the defeated warriors, still trying to maintain their dignity even in defeat. "Denied," she said. "Strip them of their armor and put them to work in the mines. Let them live with dishonor." The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than death. President Cho stood before the packed United Earth Assembly, her hands gripping the podium as she looked out at the sea of faces. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence, waiting for her words that would determine the future of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy. Behind her, the massive holographic display showed the current state of the war. Red zones marked human-controlled space, stretching across 43 star systems that had once belonged to the Confederation. Blue dots represented alien refugee camps scattered across the remaining neutral worlds. 3 years ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, they killed 15,000 of our people and offered us pocket change as compensation. Today we stand victorious over an empire that once controlled half the galaxy. The display shifted, showing before and after images of Confederation worlds, gleaming crystal cities reduced to rubble, advanced space stations drifting dark and empty. Entire planets evacuated, their populations fled to refugee camps beyond human reach. Representative Kim from the Pacific Alliance stood up, his face troubled. Madam President, the aliens have sent another peace proposal, full reparations, territorial concessions, formal recognition of human sovereignty. Surely we've proven our point. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The peace offer had arrived that morning, transmitted through neutral channels by desperate alien negotiators. It was everything humanity had initially demanded and more. I've read their proposal, President Cho replied, her voice hardening. 20 trillion credits in reparations, exclusive human control over 30 star systems, recognition of Earth as a sovereign power with full diplomatic status. She paused, letting the generous terms sink in. And in the fine print, buried on page 47, they reserve the right to maintain military forces for what they call defensive purposes. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives who had been leaning toward peace suddenly understood the trap. Defensive purposes could mean anything. Rebuilding their fleets, preparing for revenge, waiting for humanity to grow complacent. They want us to accept a temporary victory, President Cho continued once the noise died down. They want us to take their money, claim our territory, and pretend this war never happened. But what happens in 50 years when they've rebuilt? What happens when our children have forgotten the screams from the New Hope? On the display, archived footage played from the early days of the war, the desperate transmission from the dying colony ship, the casual dismissal of 15,000 human lives. The alien ambassador's cold calculation that each human death was worth 3 credits. The Confederation has existed for 10,000 years, President Cho said, her voice rising with each word. They've absorbed over 3,000 species into their empire. They've never met a problem they couldn't solve with negotiation, integration, or simple overwhelming force. She gestured to the holographic display showing human military positions. Until now. Representative Lopez from the American Federation stood up. What are you proposing, Madam President? Total war, complete genocide? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Every person in the chamber understood what was being asked. Not just victory, but the complete elimination of the Confederation as a threat. I'm proposing survival, President Cho replied quietly. Real survival, not the temporary peace they're offering. As long as the Confederation exists, as long as they remember what happened here, humanity will never be safe. The vote was scheduled for the next day, but everyone in the chamber already knew the outcome. The aliens had made their choice 3 years ago, when they decided human lives were expendable. Now humanity would make theirs. Admiral Dan stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the final battle unfold in the void before him. The last Confederation stronghold, a massive space station that had taken their civilization 2 centuries to build, was breaking apart under sustained human bombardment. Final sector secured, sir, reported Lieutenant Bin, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. All Confederation military installations have been neutralized. The space around them was filled with the debris of an empire. Broken ships drifted past the windows, their crystalline hulls catching the light of distant stars one last time before going dark forever. Human salvage crews were already moving through the wreckage, harvesting technology and resources with mechanical efficiency. Sir, Communications Officer Park called out from his station, we're receiving surrender transmissions from the surviving Confederation leadership. They're requesting immediate ceasefire and formal capitulation. Dan nodded, but didn't turn away from the window. Below them, the planet that had served as the Confederation's capital was barely recognizable. Once beautiful crystal cities lay in ruins, their spires toppled and their lights extinguished. Smoke rose from a dozen different impact sites, where human kinetic bombardments had found their targets. "What are the casualty reports?" Dan asked quietly. Bin consulted her tablet, her face carefully controlled. "Confederation military losses are complete, sir. 100% casualties across all remaining fleets and installations. And civilian populations." The bridge fell silent. This was the number everyone had been avoiding, the statistic that would define humanity's place in galactic history. 8 billion confirmed dead across all occupied worlds, Bin reported, her voice barely above a whisper. Surviving population is estimated at 2 billion, scattered across refugee camps on uncontaminated planets. 8 billion. The number hung in the air like a physical weight, more than the entire population of Earth when the war began. An entire civilization reduced to scattered survivors begging for mercy in refugee camps. "Any organized resistance remaining?" Dan asked. "None, sir," replied Intelligence Officer Song. "The last Confederation battle group surrendered 6 hours ago. Their remaining ships are either destroyed or have fled beyond our sensor range." Through the viewport, human ships moved through space with predatory grace. Sleek destroyers, massive, dreadnoughts and swarms of fighters that had learned to hunt in the void between stars. The fleet that had started as Earth's defense force had become something else entirely. The galaxy's new apex predators. "Sir," Park said hesitantly, "the Confederation Council is requesting permission to send a formal delegation. They want to discuss terms for unconditional surrender." Dan finally turned away from the window, his face showing the weariness of 3 years of total war. Behind him, the ruins of the galaxy's greatest civilization continued to burn. "Tell them we'll consider it," he said simply. The truth was there were no terms to discuss. The war had gone beyond territory or reparations or diplomatic solutions. It had become about something much more fundamental, ensuring that what happened to the New Hope could never happen again. Around them, human crews worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the long journey home. They would return as conquerors, carrying the technology and resources of a fallen empire. But more importantly, they would return with the knowledge that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They were the only ones left standing, all. "Ships," Dan announced over the fleet communications, "prepare for departure. Our work here is done." Behind them, the last lights of the Confederation went out forever. Trader Rowe checked his cargo manifest for the 3rd time as his small freighter approached the checkpoint at the edge of what used to be Confederation space. 5 years had passed since the war ended, but the invisible borders were still there, marked not by signs but by the fear that radiated from every alien who dared to travel these shipping lanes. The journey that once took his father 2 weeks now required 3 months. Commercial traffic was forced to take long detours around human-controlled systems, adding thousands of light-years to simple trade routes. Nobody wanted to risk accidentally entering space that belonged to the humans. "Freighter, 77 Kappa, prepare for inspection," came the mechanical voice over his comm system. The translation was perfect, but everyone knew that humans monitored every word spoken in their territory. 2 sleek human patrol ships emerged from the darkness, their weapon systems clearly visible even to civilian sensors. Rowe had seen these ships before, always in pairs, always watching. They moved through space like predators, every line of their design speaking of deadly efficiency. The inspection was swift and thorough. Human scanners penetrated every corner of his ship, analyzing his cargo, checking his crew, even monitoring his biometric readings for signs of deception. They said nothing during the process, communicating only through data streams and scanner sweeps. When it was over, the patrol ships simply vanished back into the void, leaving Rowe's freighter alone with its racing heartbeat and sweating crew. At the trading station where Rowe stopped for fuel, the atmosphere was thick with whispered conversations. Aliens from dozens of species conducted their business in hushed tones, constantly glancing at the security monitors that might be watching them. "My offspring asks why the stars have gone dark in the eastern spiral," one Velmari merchant said to another as they loaded cargo containers. "Tell them the humans live there now," came the reply. "Tell them never to go that way. Tell them some places in the galaxy are not meant for civilized beings." Rowe overheard similar conversations at every stop, parents warning their children about the empty zones on star charts. traders sharing stories of ships that had wandered too close to human space and simply disappeared. Refugee families still searching for relatives who had vanished during the war. The numbers were staggering when you added them up. 43 star systems under direct human control, over 200 worlds completely evacuated, billions of refugees scattered across the remaining free territories, living in camps that had become permanent settlements. At the fuel depot, Ro waited in line behind a family of crystalline beings who still bore the distinctive markings of former Confederation citizens. The children, if they could be called that, stayed close to their parents and spoke in voices so quiet they could barely be heard. "Papa," one of them whispered, "when can we go home?" The adult's skin shifted to darker hues, the color pattern. That meant deep sadness. "There is no home anymore, little one. The humans live there now." As Ro completed his refueling, a human patrol ship passed through the system on its regular route. It was just a routine patrol, nothing threatening about it, but every ship in the station immediately powered down non-essential systems and went silent until it passed. The ship ignored them completely, but its presence was a reminder that hung over the entire galaxy like a storm cloud. Somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, humanity was growing stronger, building new ships, expanding into territories that no other species dared to claim. The war was over, but the terror remained, passed down through whispered stories and fearful glances at the night sky.